Hey, Steve Stine from Guitar Zoom here. Thank you so much for joining me. What I'd like to talk about today is just giving you some ideas of some things that you can think about to try and make your melodies or your melodic soloing a little more expressive and a little more authentic sounding, maybe without having to learn, new scales and theory and things like that. And not that those things aren't important, because of course they are. But just trying to find some things that meet you right where you are right now when you're playing. So the first thing here, I've got some ideas written down here. The first thing I would say, number one, is learn to slow down. And that might mean slow down your playing, but it certainly means slow down your thought process. Because sometimes when we go to start playing, all these things that we practice all the time just hit us 100 miles an hour, and then we get confused because we're not sure what we should be doing, or we're trying to use, too many ideas at the same time. Just relax and learn to slow down a little bit. So that may mean playing, most certainly, but it should also mean your frame of mind and your thought process. That's the first thing. It's just trying to learn to slow everything down, which is going to help the other things we're going to talk about. So the second thing is learning how to utilize, as masterfully as you can, vocal tools, I call them, which are things like hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, bends, vibrato, just different stuff like that really brings what you're trying to do to life. So if you think about the melody that I'm creating here, if I do something like this, the first thing, now I'm thinking about being in the key of C. Let's just say I was playing like a C major 7 here. Okay, so what I'm doing is moving, and the speed at which I do my slide is entirely up to me, whether I want to do something like that. That's entirely up to me. But I'm utilizing that. Now, in my particular phrase that I'm making right now, I'm not using any bending at this point. But I do have a lot of slides happening, and I've got some hammer-ons and pull-offs, some things like that you could utilize as well. So learning how to use those tools in your playing, and that's part of slowing down your thought process, is learning to really, again, not just doing these things out of obligation because your teacher told you that you should use hammer-ons or pull-offs or something, but really learning how to utilize them in your playing to make something that sounds really nice, okay? So relaxing a little bit and pulling in those vocal tools. So the third thing I've got here is making sure that you dial in the appropriate guitar tone. Now, when I talk about these things, I'm not trying to sell you some sort of a product. You don't have to go buy a new amp or anything like that, but you really should think about if when you grab your guitar and play, nothing changes about the amp tone that you're using no matter what situation you find yourself in, or you never change the volume or the pickup selector switch or something like that, that's some new territory that you really should think about, is trying to dial in a more appropriate tone. So right now, because I'm not playing something that's heavier, oftentimes I play, metal and different things like that, I'm really not looking for that tone at all. I'm trying to get something completely different. And you can hear that every time I change that pickup selector, it sounds quite different. And I'm not talking about which, you don't need to go buy new pickups or anything like that. You just have to explore what you have. And, so with this tone, now I'm on the 4th position, so everything's getting a little more sounding like that, a little more muffled. Or if I go back down here, now that might be a little too bright, so I might just start exploring. And the other thing you'll notice is I'm using a lot of dynamics when I pick as well. So I'm not just picking everything at the same volume. I can get different dynamics out of that as well. So that's something else to think about. And then the next one is learning to utilize effects in the proper manner. Now, I always like to tell this real quick story. When I was a kid, I was convinced by the people that I used to hang out with that effects were terrible. You shouldn't use effects ever, because the only people that used effects were people that were trying to, mask their inadequacies when it came to guitar playing. And that couldn't have been further from the truth, but that's what I understood about effects. And of course, I never had any delay and reverb pedals and things like that when I was a kid anyway. But the thing I think about with, like, right now I've got a delay and reverb on there, is that the delay and the reverb should never, unless it's for a specific element in my song or something like that, the reverb and delay should always be far less than the volume of the actual guitar tone. So, you don't want it the same or more, unless, again, it's an actual element that you're trying to use for a specific song or something. When you're just playing, if you drop that down, it doesn't get in the way. So as I play, if I go... You see, you hear it when I'm done playing. You don't really hear it while I'm playing. And again, you might a little bit, but it's not getting in the way. It's not interrupting the normal element of my guitar tone and the volume of the notes that I'm playing. So what I like to do is have delay and reverb that's washing in the background when I'm done playing. And the way I was trying to explain it to students is, if you think about it, what that's really doing is it's giving you more notes to play even though you're not playing. Like if I do something like this, I should let that happen, that delay and reverb that you're hearing at the end, because it's still a musical element, right? So it gives me a chance to do all the other things I've been talking about with you, especially number one, to slow down, to breathe a little bit. I don't need to play during that. I could allow that to be the reaction to that note, and then move into the next thing that I do. And then when I'm done with that, again, allow that to breathe, allow that reverb and delay to happen, and again, create a little bit more space. But if you listen, you're going to hear, especially if you have headphones on, you're going to hear I have just a little bit of a stereo delay happening there. Okay? But it dies and it fades in the background. So when I'm doing this, you don't really notice it. So I always tell people, if you're new to using effects, I'd be a little bit careful with that you don't overdo it, but certainly don't adopt the mentality that having a delay and a reverb would be a bad thing. Again, there are times when you wouldn't want it. If you were, playing a rhythm section, you wanted it to be really tight, whether you're playing live or tracking. A lot of times when you record, it's always nice to just record dry. You can always add those effects later if they need to be there. But if you're doing a solo or you're creating a melody, you listen to some of the players that you really love, whether, for me, it'd be people like Neil Schon or, John Petrucci or David Gilmour, it could be a million different people, but they most certainly have this kind of effect on their tone when they're doing things like this. Some more, some less. Some songs are different, right? Some albums are different. So it's just something to explore a little bit. And then the last thing I want to tell you about is what I call intervallic movement. And I'm not really talking about, an arpeggio per se, or playing in fourths or something like that. I just mean try and learn to break up the monotony of going all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we play that way all the time, it just sounds like we're playing up and down scales. So that's why when you look at what I was doing here, I'm sliding into the root, the C, and then I'm heading over here to the fifth, which is the G. So there's a nice big jump in there. Then I kind of centralize. You see, into this section, and then do some stuff with that. But I've got there's all kinds of different things that you could do with those notes, but learning how to play more spread out. Whether you want to think of it as intervallic or just thinking about jumping over a little bit to create larger spaces between the intervals or the distance between the notes, so you're not just playing straight up and down a scale. So these are great things to look at and see if they help you a little bit with your playing. Now, if you can do me a favor, comment, let me know about these and any other ideas that you can think of that might benefit somebody. Just make a comment and help somebody out. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. You can always like and share the video. And if you like my teaching, you can always head over to guitarzoom.com and check out my guitar courses. And I have some subscription sites as well that could certainly benefit you. So take care, stay positive, and have a good day.